Mr. Carter, most of my generation, learning about the war and the generations that came after I did, pretty much learned about World War II from what we saw on the movie screen and on television. And that war was pretty well decided by the time the movies came out and we learned about it. But in your generation, that war was far from decided by the time it started.
That's right.
What are your recollections? What do you remember about the early problems, how World War II started, about the problems with Germany and Japan?
I don't know much about that, why it happened, but I think Hitler wanted to rule the world. That's my belief. They said they killed Hitler. I don't have no proof of that.
Right, right. But when the war started, now were you at home at the time, or were you already out working?
Yes, I was at home then.
Okay. And what was going on in your home life at the time? What job were you doing back in the States?
I worked in a funeral home then, and I think that's why they put me in the medics. It had a bearing on it, I'm sure.
Because you'd had that experience working with
Yes.
with bodies already, with the human
Jobs
body.
were very hard to find then, but that's where I was working in the funeral home.
Now tell me a little bit about what was just going on in life back in America at that time.
Well, it was peaceful, quiet, nothing much was going on. It was still in a depression. I don't think it ended really until after the war was over.
So when you all were back in the United States and things were going on peaceful, and a lot was going on in Europe, of course, at the time, just what were your thoughts about going into the military? Because were you inducted?
I was inducted, yeah, I was drafted.
Okay, so you were drafted, and I know you said your brother was drafted about the same day. What happened in that period, just in preparation, you all getting ready to go into the military?
I tell you, leaving your family is difficult. So I didn't have anyone then myself. See, my brother was married, just my mother and I lived together.
And what were your mom's thoughts in that period about you going off to war?
A lot of tears were shed.
It had to be hard on the family. Now, were you the breadwinner? Were you the person bringing home the money for that family?
I was.
How did she deal with that?
Well, I think the other brothers and sisters helped her some. And I gave them an allotment after they inducted me in service. They sent her what they call a Class B allotment. A portion of my salary went to her.
So she was able to be taken care of through your salary
was.
that you got from the military. And when you were beginning to prepare to go into the military to go through basic training, what were your thoughts about what you were getting into at the time?
I think I was like all the other boys. You didn't know what was going to happen next. Because they sent, after I was inducted, they sent me home for 1 week. And you had to make all your preparations in that 1 week. Of course, I didn't have the business anyway at that time. But my brother was married and he got to stay at home. He took his basic at Camp Polk, Louisiana, and then he went on desert maneuvers and back to Fort Benning. But him being married did save him for about a year.
Now, you were living in Georgia at the time, but you had to go to what camp for basic training at that point?
Camp Joseph T. Robinson, Arkansas, just outside of Little Rock.
Was that your first time out of the state of Georgia?
You know, it probably was.
So that was a pretty major trip for you to make, because that was cross country.
It was probably, and after I finished my basic training, I was transferred to Colorado, where I took my specialized training. I was a surgical technician.
So that specialized training done in Colorado then prepared you for that field that you went into. How long between, if you remember from going from Colorado where did you go from there after you left Colorado?
New York,
And from New York to
overseas.
overseas. Now, I know that when you were in New York, a lot had to be going in your mind about what the next step
I
was.
was scared to death.
You have any thoughts about what, where you were going to go and whether it was going to be Africa?
No, I had no idea we were going to Europe, but the boy said, well, the type of training you took, you're going to Europe.
And was it at that time that you were assigned to the 29th Infantry Division?
No, I didn't get assigned until I reached England.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit about the training that you received back in the States when you were in Arkansas and Colorado.
Oh, actually in Arkansas, you trained just as if you were in the infantry, you know. You went through the same procedure. We even fired guns. But then I was selected to be sent to that medical school at that time.
And that med school, did it teach you how to do just basic medical technique?
They did.
Okay. Anything that stands out in your mind in that camp life at either one of those places? Any funny stories or anything?
You mean out in Colorado?
In Colorado or over in Arkansas?
Arkansas it's a rough place. We trained in those swampy areas. If they knew we had to go through those trenches, they'd flood them with water a couple of days prior to that, and then they'd drain them. And then we had to crawl through that slimy mud. It was bad.
That sounds pretty bad. Sounds like not
rough.
something you'd enjoy going through.
You get where you hate yourself. I think that's a purpose in them training you like that. It was rough. I took my training from a full-blooded Japanese sergeant. He was rough.
Now that had to be a little hard realizing the Japanese were on the other side too.
He put you through all right. He was a nice guy though after you got really acquainted with him. He didn't go overseas with us because somebody would shot him. We did things that humans are not supposed to do.
Now, you know, most of us think about, when we think about travel to Europe, we think about getting on an airplane, but travel to Europe in those days, particularly with moving the troops over, that wasn't the way that happened.
No, I was on the Queen Mary.
And the Queen Mary, if I remember correctly, that was a leisure ship that had been turned into a troop transport.
That's correct.
Now, tell me about what life was like on the Queen Mary going over.
Well, I was on I deck right over the engine room, and you had lots of trouble trying to find food, you know. We had a button on our uniform, but time you period of time to get to the top deck where the meal was served, your time had expired. So we lived off of soda crackers, things like that, candy bars or whatever.
So it wasn't the whole idea of being on a leisure ship the way you would as a tourist.
Well, you could get lost on that Queen Mary. It's huge. It's A, B, C, sun deck, and then from down to the engine room. I don't know, it's about 15 or 16 decks on that ship. It's huge.
Now, what were living conditions like there? Did y'all sleep in large bunks, or?
We did. They had bunks hanging inside the swimming pool.
Inside the swimming pool? Were those like mounted on the walls on the side of the?
They had pipes.
They had run pipes all the way down.
Like a hammer. It was rough. It was so crowded. And everywhere you looked, someone was sick.
Mm.
It was bad.
Now
5 days, though, was all it took us from New York to Glasgow, Scotland.
So you went to Glasgow, and then from there?
It docked in Glasgow. There's only 2 docks over there to accommodate that big ship. Glasgow, Scotland, and Liverpool, where I landed. Later on, I was transferred to Liverpool.
So from there, did you immediately go to Liverpool, or was that?
No, it was about, I'd say 2 weeks.
Okay.
Before I went to Liverpool.
Did you go by train or was that by boat as
by
well?
train.
Okay. And then eventually, prior to going over to the mainland, to mainland Europe, you must have been in London at some time.
Yeah, I did. I stayed in London about 2 weeks.
Did you get an opportunity to get around the city and take a look at the sights?
Not too much.
Okay, so it was all business.
You
pretty
tried
much.
to find an air raid shelter most of the time, because they were, I don't know where you've heard it now, but they were flooding that town, especially London, with those buzz bombs,
Yeah,
V2
the
rockets.
V2, the V1
you
and
could see
V2
those
rockets.
things flying.
Did you actually get to see a buzz bomb go over?
Yes.
What was that like?
Take a whole block with it. Very, very destructive.
If I remember my history correctly, that buzz bomb would start, you'd hear the sputter, and then eventually it would get quiet, and nobody knew where it would land from there.
I suppose that was the amount of fuel that was in it. I guess that's what governed it. But it was it's just a load of explosives, all it was.
Did you actually get to see one explode, or were you in the shelter by then?
I saw the effects of it after it hit, because we were hunting a air raid shelter when it came over. But they come over constantly.
Hmm. So from that point, you've got to realize, being in London, you've got to realize there's only one place to really go at that point, and that would be to Europe. And I know there had to have been a lot of rumors going around about the invasion. When did you finally find out where you all were going to land? Were you already on the water by that time?
I'm going to say about the 4th day of June, 44.
Okay.
We knew then we were going to be in that invasion. But we didn't know exactly where it was going to be.
Now, the 29th Infantry Division, which you were a part of, was, as in the medical unit, was a part of that invasion, and they actually were the troops that landed at Omaha Beach.
That's right.
And most people that wouldn't make a lot of sense to them, but there were certain select beaches that were identified in Normandy for the invasion, and most people would remember it today by watching movies like Private Ryan. That unit that lands on Saving Private Ryan is actually the 29th Infantry Division that lands at that beach.
Very overcast that day, so we didn't get too much air support. The planes couldn't get down low enough, to be effective. But they did get quite a bit of artillery in there, which saved most of the boys. There's a lot of lives lost that day.
Now, when you were going over the channel during this invasion, what was going through your mind at that time? Do you remember? I know you had to be scared.
That's it. That picture, I was scared. I think everybody else was too. Yeah, we went over across the channel in an old British ship, and we were out, I'd say a mile from the coast, and we went in on an LST. We had to climb down a rope ladder and then shooting. That was a German bivouac area where we landed.
Now, say that one more time. You said a bivouac area?
Yeah, that's where the Germans were embedded, and they were like shooting ducks in a fish pond.
And most people wouldn't understand what that meant, but basically, if I remember correctly, they're up in these concrete reinforced bunkers, and they're up off of the ground on a hillside.
That's right.
And they're looking
There's
down
cliffs.
at you all as you're coming in from that cliff.
Yeah.
So basically, y'all are coming in on the sand and the water, and they're up here shooting down at you.
Down at us. There's a lot of them didn't make it. You could see body parts all over that water.
Mm.
That's something you don't care to remember, but it was there.
Now, you're being with the medical group. As soon as you get off that ship,
We'll go to work.
you've got to go to work, and the work's all around you. Do you remember what happened, your first recollections of landing on that beach?
Well, we set the dispensary up. good size. It would be about the equivalent of a 40-bed hospital. About the equivalent. It's good size. And all we could do is patch them up and send them on to a general hospital, which was late getting set up. We had a problem there for 2 or 3 days on that beach.
So when you got off the boat that you'd come over on the channel, were things pretty well secure by the time you got off?
They were.
Okay. So a lot of the infantry unit had already gotten
the
off
infantry
and cleared
was
the beach.
First. They were the first to hit the beach. But we were connected with them. We were on the same boats, but we were kind of in the back part of it.
And of course, you're still the shooting target for any artillery piece or those 88s that they like to use.
Those Germans were well prepared. Some of them said if there had been 5 more years, then they would have won that war, because Hitler was prepared. They were still burning bodies when we crossed the Rhine River.
Mm. Now, I know that a part of the war that in movies a lot of times gets left out is the camp life. The wars and the battles are still going on around you, but you're still have a place to sleep at night. You still are going and doing a little bit different activity when you're not on duty. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that like after you all had landed?
I wish I could remember the name of that first little town, village that we came into. I can't remember. But anyway, there was an orchard there. I can remember that part. But the artillery had already destroyed the tops of the trees. So we dug in there. All of us had a foxhole. And at night, the German plane, same time every night, real late in the afternoon. He'd come over to strafe us. So we were out there watching them that particular afternoon when that plane come over. And in the foxhole, now this is the truth, the foxhole that I had dug prior to going to watch a plane, when I got back, there's a big piece of shrapnel laying right over my head would have been.
So you would have been killed in that air
I would
raid.
have instantly.
Mm.
That was probably from an American gun, though.
How-
Shrapnel.
Someone firing back at the plane, or?
Yeah, they were
Okay.
firing the plane.
Well, and that happened a lot. There were a lot of casualties from
Sure.
friendly fire. Okay.
If you was in the wrong place at the wrong time, you got it.
Now tell me a little bit about how you were greeted as an American soldier when you got to France. Were the people happy to see you there?
Yeah, they seemed to be, but you know, Paris, I went through Paris. The country was overrun with Germans when we went in there. We stayed on Champs-Élysées and the Petit Palais. That's a city museum.
So you actually stayed in the museum?
Right in the heart of Paris, not too far from Eiffel Tower.
And they have bunk beds set up for you there, and you?
No, we slept on the floor.
Probably marble.
Yeah, I very seldom ever slept in a bed or inside of a building as far as that goes. Snows a lot up there. We'd sleep outside.
Now, did you get to go to any of the things that most of us would think about as tourist places? Did you get to enjoy
I did
any
go
of
to
that?
visit one building. Now, I always wanted to see it. Was a Cathedral of Notre Dame.
Right.
I did get to see that. It's beautiful.
Had that received any damage from the war? Had it been? Were there any damage to that building when you went there?
Not too much. Not too much.
That's good.
I couldn't believe it because like when I was in England prior to the invasion, that country was leveled. Ooh, a lot of damage. There was a lot in France, but not as heavy as England.
Now tell me about the camp life or the life, when the battle isn't going on. You have any favorite stories from that period? Any buddies that you had that you like to hang out with and
I
do
remember
things with?
we went through, after we left Paris, with the next town was Verdun.
Right.
The trenches from the First World War
a very
still
famous
there.
battle.
They were still there. And then the next place was can't think of the name of the river. But we were on one side of the river and the Germans were on the other side. It wasn't funny. I can't think of the name of it. It's prior to us going into the little country over at Regroup.
Right.
Luxembourg. Our outfit was scattered everywhere.
Mm.
That was due to that river crossing.
Do you have any favorite way that you like to spend your free time when you weren't working?
You didn't have much of that. We worked as much as 18 hours a day.
Now tell me a little bit about that. Did you have any particular medical specialty that you did well in the medical unit?
No, but I was a surgical technician. I worked in surgery most of the time. It's just one right or the other.
So basically the guys would start coming in on the stretchers.
That's
and
right.
You would start, probably I guess initially you determine, I think they call it triage. You determine who was the most serious case.
That's
and
right.
You'd start dealing
That's
with the
right.
worst case first.
Yeah, that's the way it worked. You try to select the ones the most seriously injured and care for them, stop the bleeding, whatever. We then transfer them to another hospital. A lot of them come back to England. A lot of them did. It was several days before they set the general hospitals up, the larger ones. I remember one of those hospitals was I think it's on my discharge papers. 48th General Hospital, that's huge. About like Emory or something up home. We kept them busy.
Now,
Picking up those bodies was what was so gruesome, you know. You couldn't be careful as you should have been, because, you know, referring to the injury, you have to be careful when you move someone, because you had to get them out in a hurry. Some of them were drug out.
and y'all had to pick up any of the parts that were left behind too to bring with the person who was injured too.
But it was hard to match them.
That would be difficult.
I saw one multiple amputee while I was over there, just one. It was, all he had was his torso. Arms, legs, everything was gone, the ears, nose. He was a belly gunner in a plane, and the shrapnel blew that bubble that was under the plane.
Like a radio tail
And they were
gunner.
on a rail over Germany, and it was cold, and they had to keep him in there till he got back to England. So he was frozen. You could hear that poor fella holler, begging somebody to take him out of his misery.
Well, I know that that you had to have seen in the unit you were in, you had to have seen a lot of really bad casualties.
I did.
And literally thousands of casualties out of that unit, according to what we read in the history books.
That's right.
Anything that stands out in your mind about doing that kind of work?
I do remember one incident there, a colonel, we had to take his leg off out in the field. We didn't even get back to the out place with him. But I guess he lived through it, but we took it off just below the knee. He stepped on one of those old flat mines. It got his leg. Now that's a factor over there. When you walk, you better be careful where you put your feet, because the ground was covered in mines. I saw a French, they had little two-wheel wagons over there they used instead of a truck. And they'd been gathering turnips. That's one of their major crops over there. And he had all of his family, I suppose they were his family, on that little two-wheel wagon, had oxen pulling it, and he ran over on the side of the road. He was trying to get out. He ran over it with the right wheel. It blew that thing to smithereens. I imagine it killed every one of them. Oh, you saw some gory sights over there. I don't want no more of it.
I understand.
I told my wife before she passed away, I said, if I have to go again, I'm going to go like a man. She said, what do you mean by that? I said, tied up in chains. I don't want more of that.
Now, do you have any fond memories of being over there from the standpoint of friends that you had? Because I know that whenever you're in that kind of hectic pace, but also danger, men have a tendency to bond together as good friends.
Oh yeah, they were, especially the French people. They seemed to be real happy because you don't know about the French. Because like I said, Paris especially, they were just overrun with Germans, just working in there. We had a time clearing them out. Women especially, they were, you know why they kept them there, for their own use. And there were hundreds and probably thousands of them in that palais where we spent the night in the basement. I know the name of that river now, Moselle.
Moselle. And that was not long after you all had gotten there, you came across that river, if I remember.
That's right. After we left Parisburg on, I don't know, down that way. We were getting close to Luxembourg. That little town, country was neutral during the war. They took no part in it. But we were welcome there.
Very good.
Nice people. And from Luxembourg, we went through Belgium on the way to Germany.
Now, the 29th, if I remember right, the 29th basically continued to move all through the Rhine campaign, and you all came across a river. Was it the Rhine River? Or the Ruhr?
In Liège, Belgium, there's a river there. I'm not sure if that's the Rhine. No, it wouldn't be.
I'm thinking of the Elbe River. Y'all came across the Elbe River.
Yeah, I've heard that name before.
And you all were ordered at that point to stop and wait for the Russians to catch up.
That's right.
In the advance. Now, for most of you all, you'd never met a Russian before in your life.
That's true.
And so
they were rough customers.
Tell me about that. What was it like meeting them, and what did you see?
Well, you couldn't speak their language, so you couldn't get too friendly with them, but they worked together.
Now, I remember there's a famous photograph of an American soldier reaching over and handshaking a Russian soldier.
Try to make friends with them.
As best you can, share a cigarette or whatever.
It's very difficult when you don't speak the language.
Exactly, exactly. Any thoughts about getting an order like that to wait? What did y'all think?
We hadn't heard about that. You know, when you're a foot soldier, you don't hear too much. But we hadn't heard about all that burning Hitler was doing in Germany. So that was a big shock to all of us.
Now, when y'all were doing the Rhine, going through the Rhine region and going through Germany, did you all actually come across any concentration camps? Or?
Oh yes, oh yes. We were, the first one we came upon was in Aachen, Germany.
Do you remember the name of that one?
I don't know more.
Okay.
No, I don't.
I know it was a long time ago. What, and you must have seen some pretty horrendous sights there, seeing the prisoners in a concentration camp.
Smell, ooh, you smell it from a mile. That was pitiful the way that he did those people. He let them go in there to take a shower, and that's when they gas them and put them in that
right
incinerator.
Now, did you all help care for those the concentration camp victims at all? Feed them, or did y'all were y'all
We
back on
tried
the road
to feed
pretty
them
quick?
best we could.
Right.
We certainly did.
And give them a little bit of medical care, I'm sure,
Right.
whatever you could.
See, we moved so fast. The fighting force moved so fast, they didn't take up too much time, but that rear echelon, they did. They fed them.
Yeah, I read where your unit, in fact, at one point had just been fairly fresh from battle, and you were put right back in to battle on almost a continuous basis. So
That's right.
it was pretty
We're
active.
very busy.
In fact, I noticed I was doing some research on an internet site, and I happened to notice that there are 3 monuments that are built to that unit. One that's in France, in that city there, and that's pretty significant when Europeans build a monument.
That's right. That's right.
To an American unit.
Let's see, before I moved from Stone Mountain, that's about 94, I received a little, I don't know what you call it, acknowledgement for being in that particular battle. Got it from France.
Now, did you remain with that unit till the war was over?
No.
What happened when you left that unit? Where did you go from there?
I went to southern France. I can't think of the name of it. It's a big poet down there, the Rock of Gibraltar. Starts with I'll have to say a M.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look on the map. But when you went down there, was it to do hospital work down there as well?
Yeah, that's where that 48 General Hospital I was talking about.
The large one that
it was stationed. That's the one I came home with.
Now, would that be at the very end of the war, after the war had ended?
War was over then.
Okay. And you probably got to spend a little bit more time down in the city, down in that area.
Marseille.
In Marseille.
That's the name of it. That's a beautiful city. Of course, it's a port city. It was kind of dirty. But we stayed there for, I guess, close to a month in the Calais staging area. We'd go to docks, and there was something wrong with the ship. It wasn't large enough. They had mechanical trouble, but we went there 5 times before we boarded. We came home on the USS Patrick Henry, a smaller ship, about 3,500 people could get in.
Now, before you came home, I understand there's a very interesting story that you have of a general who most people would have at least heard of, Omar Bradley.
Yeah, I gave him a back rub.
No, tell me about that. How do you get to give the Supreme Commander, Allied Commander, a back rub? That's a pretty major thing.
We were in Butcher's Garden then, when the first time I saw him. He was really our commander.
Now, Berster's Garden was Hitler's big hangout where he took a lot of Nazi leaders.
A beautiful place.
So you actually got to go there and you saw Berster's Gardens.
Yeah, I stayed there a few days.
Now, Bradley is as you were saying, was your commander, the 29th. He was over the 29th, and he was over, in fact, that entire force, expeditionary force, if you will, that hit the beaches.
Yeah.
It included a lot of units, so he was almost like your commander's commander. But tell me about this back rub that happened.
They brought him in the dispenser that day, and I recognized him real quickly, and I stood at attention and said, "Sergeant," said, "you don't have to stand attention." I said, "I'm in pain." So they ordered me to take a back rub and said, you're guilty, you're going to have to do it. I enjoyed it, but he never did come back anymore.
Hopefully you didn't give him back rub.
Just prior to the end of the war.
Now, Omar Bradley was known as the soldier's general because of his treatment of his troops. His troops
he was
really
nice,
liked him.
real nice.
And he did a lot of fair treatment of the troops as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of that general that came by. Oh, I know it was a British
Not Monty, Montgomery?
Montgomery, that's who it was. Come by one day inspecting the troops. We didn't fight all the time. Usually you had a slack moment occasionally. And he give that upside down salute to all the boys. Boys wouldn't pay attention to him. And there was a big write-up in Stars and Stripes about that. The guys ignored him. Patton says, why don't you do like I do, say hi, boys. Patton was, boy, he was a character. I've seen him, but you know, not close enough to talk to him. He was my brother's commander. He was a rough character.
Now tell me a little bit about that, because I know Patton died over in Germany in the Jeep wreck.
Yeah, that's right.
So you saw him before that.
They said his own driver when it was in there. I don't know, I've heard so many tales about it. But it was something about a Jeep wreck. Well, just prior to the Ardennes, I know you read about the Ardennes breakthrough. My brother and I both were in that. That was in Malmö in St. Viv. That's in Belgium. So if the Germans, the breakthrough came on the British sector down here, and if they had known it, that's the front lines, and back here is the supply depot. If they had known it, we'd have been in serious trouble.
Because they would have been able to break through that line, and that battle would have gone absolutely the opposite way.
That's right. You couldn't tell where they were, what kind of soldiers were there for several days, because they had American uniforms. They had American equipment. But my feet turned black with that book over there.
From the frozen?
Some more. You'd have to go so many days, you know, you didn't have time to take your shoes off and take care of yourself. There's snow, it was snow all over the ground. And I saw my brother the second time. The one time during that Ardennes breakthrough. Just prior to that, I saw him in Spa, Belgium. Drove, I guess, 150 miles with a carrier that picks up a mail. It snowed all the way. I stayed up there with him for a couple of days.
So this is sometime when y'all had a break and y'all could get together at one point.
We get a break occasionally.
Now that Ardennes breakthrough, was that a part of the Battle of the Bulge?
That's it. That is the Battle of the Bulge.
That Battle of the Bulge, for those that aren't familiar with it, was really, as I remember, Hitler's last big attempt to kind of throw all of his troops and units against
That's exactly right.
the Americans and the British and turn them back in the opposite direction. But the American line broke a little bit, and the Germans came over a lot of times dressed in American uniforms.
That's exactly right.
And luckily, you all, because of your brains and your hard work, stuck it out and were able to defeat them in that battle.
That's what it took. And my brother's outfit was they were real heavy in that one. Some of the tanks were surrounded. And my brother, well, I tell you what he did, both his arms broke at the same time. And he'd gotten well, doing pretty good. But he was in the radio jeep on it, directed the artillery. He had to go down and get those 5 tanks. So he went down there, you know, and showed them how to get up and down without getting blown away. But they saved them.
And he broke both arms in that action?
No, he did that in England.
Okay.
Both of them. He was on the gas like this. I tell you, he probably wouldn't want to tell that, but he was riding one of those English bicycles with front wheel brakes. And he put them brakes on, he threw him over the handlebars, old cobblestone streets over there.
Yeah, that would be a little embarrassing.
He didn't want me to talk about that. I lost him in 1985. He was my companion. We grew up together. All the rest of them were married when we came along. Well, I hope I've shed a little light on it.
I think you have. Tell me if you've got one story or a funny story about the war that you wanted to share. What would that story be? Anything that sticks out that was just a funny occurrence that you've laughed about, or?
No, not really.
Not really?
I don't think you saw too many smiles over there.
I'm sure you probably didn't.
You sure did.
I'm sure that's true.
Everybody had to be serious.
Now you've now gotten back on the ship and you're traveling back over to the States. What's going on in your mind? What are you thinking about? What's your first meal going to be when you get back?
I was the happiest person in the world. Oh, I could almost walk on the water. Because I've been over there 29 months and 14 days.
It's a long time.
It is.
And you're thinking about your family, I'm sure.
Yes.
And who's going to greet you when you land?
My sister.
And she's there when you get there.
Yeah, she was there waiting on me at Fort McPherson.
Did you recognize her when you first saw her? Because you've been gone.
I recognized the car before I did her. I was a happy boy. They hadn't seen me since I was inducted. I never did get a pass to come home. My brother, the one I was talking about, he stayed down at Fort Benning about a year before he went overseas. They had seen him. His first baby was born while both of us were overseas.
So you had not seen the baby by the time you had gotten home. 2 years old at that point? Just
yes.
about 2 years old.
Yeah.
And what was his reaction to seeing his child like that?
He was a happy little fella.
Now you get home and you meet your sister, and what happens from there? Where do you go from there?
I went by, the first stop I made was on Ponce de Leon Avenue in Atlanta. My wife, my future wife, was living there. And I got to see her before I even went home. In fact, I believe we took her home. I believe we did take her down to our house.
Now, so y'all were still dating at that time. You weren't yet
sure.
married. Okay. And so you take her back home, and there had to be a happy reunion that went on when you got home.
I have pictures of that at home.
Well, you've got to share some of that with us, because we'd like to put some of that on the tape.
See, I'm living down here with Carolyn now, temporarily. Like my homes, I'm going to have to make different arrangements about it. My other daughter's looking after it. But I got a lot of pictures about that.
Now, when you were overseas, did you write a lot of letters home?
Yeah, but sometime it'd be weeks before they pick them up. In the same way, the incoming mail. You might go a month, wouldn't get a single letter, and that just did a lot for your morale.
Now, the letters that you wrote, do you have any of those back home that your mom might have saved?
Oh, my mother had them, but they disappeared. I don't know.
Long since gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Those email letters. You know, they censored everything. You couldn't even tell them where you were. You say somewhere in Europe. You couldn't say no specific town that you was near. That was a military secret. Don't want no more of it.
I understand. Anything that stands out as a major event when you were in battle that you'd like to talk about or like to share with your family?
I tell you, none of it was very popular. I was in 5 major battles over there.
So that would be the Normandy invasion, Battle of the Bulge we know about.
Ardennes breakthrough.
Ardennes breakthrough.
There was 5 of them. It's on my discharge. I'll send that, pick that up when I go back to Georgia.
That'd be great. I'd like to see that.
And Carolyn, bring a copy of it back with her.
Well, I know the 29th was one of the higher decorated units.
Yeah, it were.
A lot of bravery, a lot of natural bravery that came out of that unit.
Georgia boys and
Virginia
Florida
and
boys and Alabama, most Southern boys.
Right. That unit, was it called the Blue and the Gray back in those days?
It was.
Okay, so it's still the same unit that today that's stationed up in Virginia. Well, let me just ask you to feel free to say anything that you want to message-wise to your family, because you know you're doing this for them.
It's been so long I've forgotten a lot of it. But there's not a moment of it that wasn't outstanding, though. Something happening every day. But I guess that invasion, when we hit that beach, that was the most outstanding. It was scared to death, being shot at all at the same time. It's not a good feeling. Those landing barges, the LSTs, they come in so close, they couldn't come any further because they hit dirt. And that sand on that beach, you know, they couldn't come all the way in, so we waited in water with all those body parts. I remember that real well.
Well, I'll tell you, your memory of it is a pretty good memory of it. You did an excellent job.
Well, I've tried to remember it. My wife didn't like me to talk about the war. She said she had too many memories to say if she didn't want more of that. It was something that it gets embedded in your mind. You won't ever forget it. Scary days. I guess we had the most peace of mind is while we were in England prior to the invasion. Those people over there were real nice to us. They grumbled all the time, but they were nice.
And that was grumbling about the traffic you created and the...
That's right.
Yeah, the...
American wasn't sending them the right kind of food and things of that nature. They ought to have been thankful they were sending them food. You know, Great Britain doesn't have any natural resources except coal.
Just a big island, yep.
Nothing but people. You can travel the entire length of the British Isles in one day. It's no bigger than Florida.
Pretty small area for a country like that.
People, ooh, they're like these fire ants you see now. They're just working. That's the first experience I'd had with a double-decker bus. When they traveling down the street there in Liverpool, they turned the curve, you just swear that thing was going to hit that building. But they rumbled on through it, old antique-looking things. And they drive on the left-hand side of the road. It took a while to get used to that. We got over there in England just in time to care for those ships coming from South Africa. What campaign was that?
Let's see, South Africa. Well, I know about the North Africa campaigns.
It might have been north.
Yeah, they could have been. They could have gone down through the south and come back up because that Mediterranean area wasn't very safe. Probably the Africa campaigns.
Yeah, well, I know we were unloading those ships. That's what we did that before we started our training.
That would have been the 8th. I'm trying to think whether it's the 8th or...
I don't know too much about it. I just remember us unloading those ships.
Were those Brits that you were unloading?
Yes, wounded people.
Yeah.
They come directly to the States.
Well, you did great. I appreciate it. I really do.
You're welcome.